Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a first submission by Vigdis of the horse Malou. Not sure I'm pronouncing those names correctly. The horse is an 11-year-old Danish warm blood that was a project horse. The horse was very nervous, had some physical problems. The horse does have a roachback, which is what we're looking at here. And in our experience, a roachback is not a terrible thing. It can make the horse a little stiff in the back, but as the old uh, sale guys used to say, so to speak, that they'd rather have a roachback than a swayback. So they tended to think it could make the horse kind of strong. But I think it tends to make them a little bit stiff. But in our experience, it isn't a big problem once they get stretching over their backs. In fact, we've seen, as with the horse Fuego that we have, the roach in his back after some chiropractic treatments and correct work pretty much almost disappeared. Still there, but nothing like it was. So I think you're on the right track with this. Starting off here in the walk, this is really good walk, work in the stretch. And once again, this is an example of a horse that's stretching all the way down. A lot of times people will talk about, well, you shouldn't stretch down further than knees, you shouldn't go this far or that far. It all depends upon the conformation of the horse. The reality is you have to go as deep with the head and neck as is necessary to allow the back to come up and move freely and connect across the top line, because as we know, every horse has a different level of strength, and there'll be a different place with their neck that allows that to happen. When horses have almost no top line at all, they'll tend to be very straight down from the shoulder and almost hold their head straight down or neck straight down. That's because they have no muscle, and when we get them to release the underside of their neck, when horses have been pulling, that's why they develop the big underside of their neck, is from pulling with their shoulders instead of pushing themselves forward and lifting up from the hindquarters. So I'd like to see here, while I like the stretch, it just needs to have a little more rhythm. So the reality is, once we get the horse to stretch, then we want to find that maximum walk. So that's the only thing I'm seeing here. The horse is a little bit slow, fast here a little bit. So what we'd like to do is get into the stretch and stay there, and then try to find that consistency over the back that will allow it to develop some real muscle. But you're on the right track here. This is a student I will be working with pretty soon as I go to Norway in only another couple of weeks. So we look forward to seeing everybody over there. We'll be in Sweden, and then Sweden again, and then to Norway for almost a week. So all I'm seeing here, what I'd like to see you add to this, is just a little more active walk, which I think is what you're trying to do there. So I think you're on the right track. It's very normal for horses to jig a little bit. When we're asking for a long walk, horses are usually looking for the easier way out of things, so they very often will stretch down and then slow down. And what we have to do is just keep them swinging through. You're doing a good job with that. I like how your hands are just widening there. That's the biggest thing in the beginning when we're trying to learn how to do this, is just learning how to keep a consistent contact with the reins. And that's why we do the thing of widening our hands in the beginning, so that we can take up that slack. For instance, if your horse is down that long and suddenly is startled by something and throws its head up in the air, well, it would take too long to grapple up the reins. So what we have to do is just widen our hands so we don't lose contact with the horse. But this walk is really looking good here, getting down and deeper and starting to have a little more rhythmic step. Now, if anything, this horse does look like it might be a little stiff across the back when I see it walk on the steps from behind. Especially when it's not stretched all the way down, look a little hesitant. But even when the horse is stretched down, there's a little sense of loss of rhythm between each step behind. If you can kind of look at the hind legs and see what I'm talking about, it kind of steps and kind of almost looks like he's dragging his toes over the ground. Which is really kind of what the horse is doing. That's a good point. If you watch this horse's hind legs, you can see how it never really kind of picks its feet up all the way off the ground. It just kind of drags its toes along. That's also a sign of the horse being weak, so just know that that will improve as time goes on here, and you get this horse working more consistently over its back. But whenever you see a horse walking, and you look at the trail of the dirt behind them, and you see there's like, a little line, that tells you that the horse has been dragging its toes, as this one is kind of doing. It's not really picking its feet up all the way. So that's something, as I said, once again, that will increase and improve as time goes on here, as you get the horse stretching and a little more active. So what I like about the horse stretches down, but then we just have to get a little more longer swinging walk. A little work in hand might also help you on that as well. But your position looks good. You're sitting up straight in the saddle. I see your heels look like they're down, toes lifted. I don't see a lot of activity in your legs, so that's a good thing. Remember, when we use our legs, we want to teach the horse to be light, so we never want to kick or pound. That's why we carry a dressage whip with us. And we want the horse to start responding to the lightest touch of the leg, remembering that we never grip with the legs. We just impulse and then completely release again the leg. So it's never held tight or squeezed into the side of the horse, as we see so many people doing. I like to see, watching your leg there, how you are urging the horse a little bit with your heel. I see you getting your heel up and plucking a little bit underneath, and that's exactly what you should do from time to time. But I still just would like to see a little more active walk in this horse, and a little more consistency, but I think that will come in a short period of time here. You're certainly doing all the right things to help that to happen. You can kind of see with this horse, it gets down, but then when we get to that position, I'd like to see you even come behind the motion a little bit at times, maybe lift up your shoulder and come back a little behind the motion, see if that doesn't help you. So we'd like to get that walk longer and more consistent in that, and a little more swinging. And the other thing that might help this horse, as it does kind of drag its toes a little bit, is just to work it over some poles on the ground. Both in the walk and trot would probably help this horse to pick its hind legs. It's kind of flat-footed behind. You see here, even in a trot, it kind of drags its toes a little bit. So I'd just like to see you sending this horse through a little more actively. And then, as I said, working, once you have the horse over its back, then working over some ground poles would help. Now remember, when we talk about working over ground poles or working up and down hills, all the things you hear people talk about, oh, I'm going to build my horse up by doing this. Remember, those things only work if the horse is over its back. If they don't, they just do more damage to the horse. Good leg yield there. I'd like to see him stretch a little more deeply, but that was a pretty good leg yield there. Now, I assume what she was just doing there was, the horse probably felt like it had to relieve itself a little bit, and she was stopping to give it the opportunity to do so. And that's a good thing to do. We never want to get a horse feeling, and many of them do, if they really get beat up in the ring for every time they try to go to the bathroom, they can become very sort of anal retentive, so to speak, which always makes them feel very tight. And this horse has that look like it's lifting its tail up like a little bit like it would like to go. And what we always find is, once they do relieve themselves, that they always move a lot better after the fact. So we certainly always want to encourage them to do that. So even here, what I'd like to see is for you to ask this horse just to swing a little bit more actively forward. So in other words, just making the horse swing a little more just actively as you go, asking for just a little bit more than you're getting there. Of course, we want that trot stretch to be more consistent than it is. Now this is a better stretch here, getting more active. Horse beginning to swing its legs a little more regularly together. You can see there's just a slight disconnect in this horse. The legs don't seem to be moving exactly together, and they're not far off, but it tells me that the horse is just not quite over its back as well as we'd like it to be. Remember, when we talk about rhythm, a horse being rhythmic, we're talking about the two ends of the horse being in rhythm with one another. We're not talking about the speed that the horse goes around the arena. It's a confusing issue for a lot of people. So just because you're going at a consistent pace, it's like you can have a car with the wheels falling off. You can drive it and keep it consistently at 30 miles an hour, but the wheels are still falling off. And that's what we have to remember about horses. If they're not working over their back, essentially that's kind of what's happening. The wheels are falling off. It does a great deal of damage to the horse's legs as the movement, the shock of the movement is not absorbed in the back and the soft tissue. It's absorbed into the hard tissue of the joints when horses are not working over their backs, which is what's caused so many horses to go lame at such a young age these days. Now this is looking much better here. I like this swing a lot better. Be careful when the horse stretches down that you don't tend to tip over with the horse. You want to keep yourself up a little bit straighter than you're doing. Just bring your shoulders up and back just a tiny bit so you find yourself really centered over your leg. And that was getting to a better trot there. I would like to see you keep going there just to get that a little more consistent. Now this walk looks a little better here. It's not plunging so straight down, but still just needs to be a little more active. So in all things here, I'd just like to see you asking this horse for just a little more forward active movement. Now remember, when I say forward, I'm always talking about forward means to engage forward under the body. And finding the right speed to let that happen is always a bit of a challenge. If they go too fast, they'll run onto their forehand. That is, the inertia of the horse will push it onto the forehand until the horse has developed more strength. And if we go too slowly, then the horse doesn't engage behind at all. So finding that happy medium is always what we're looking for. We're always looking for the deepest step in the slowest rhythm. So recover the most ground with the least number of steps. Much better walk here. This walk is looking more rhythmic and active here as the horse stretches down. And I do think this horse does look like it's a little tight over its back. That may be what's causing the sort of stiffness of the hind end that you see when the horse walks here. There's still that sense of the horse being kind of stuck in mud or walking on flypaper as it kind of, the hind leg, watch what happens here, because the hind leg goes too far behind the body before it starts to come forward. That's what gives you that weird kind of hesitation that you see. It gets all the way back there. So this horse isn't, and that tells me, of course, that the horse isn't quite working over its back as well as it could, because if it did, that would be faster. That is, you'd see the horse coming through more evenly behind it. It will lose that sense of stuck in mud, so to speak. But this is better than it started out. Walk is better there. Now notice here the neck stays out more, and that tells you that the horse is coming through more. In the beginning, first couple of times you stretch this horse, the neck kind of plunged straight down out of the shoulders, which usually tells me the horse doesn't have much muscle on its top line, or it's not coming through. Now as the horse has begun to warm up here and start to swing a little better, we see that the neck is being held out more. It's not just plunging straight down from the shoulders there, from the withers. Now you're doing the right thing not to worry about those transitions. Remember, we don't worry about what the horse looks between the walk and trot until the walk and trot themselves look good. Now this is a better trot. Now this is starting to look a lot better. The horse has loosened up quite a bit. Much more consistent in the trot. And now all of a sudden the horse looks a little more together, that it looks more in rhythm between the front and back end. They're beginning to sync up, which tells me that the horse is beginning to work over its back a little better. You can see with each stride that the horse, as it stretches down, how much better and more consistent those legs look, that is, working together between the front legs and the back legs. It's starting to swing on a better plane together than what we saw earlier. Starting to stretch a little bit. Good. Now that's looking good down there. And right there is where you want to just send this horse on just a little bit more. So when you get that stretch, I'd like to see you urge a little bit more, just to send the horse a little bit more swinging and open. I feel like this horse can give you just a little bit more than it's doing there. Now watch that you don't start to tip forward. It's very important that you stay up straight on the horse when you are riding in the stretch. Because if we even lean over a little bit with our shoulders, it pushes the weight onto the forehand. So, you know, just like a guy at the circus walking on a big ball, you have to stay straight up or the ball is going to disappear out from underneath you. Same is true of horses once we get the ball formed. That's certainly looking better with each stride as this horse stretches down. It's looking better and better. So I really think you're on the right track here with this. It just needs to all get a little more consistent. And once again, notice how the front and back seem a little more in sync now than it did in the earlier stages. That's getting much, much better here. There. Now the horse looks to me like it's starting to push off of those legs. It's starting to push up into its back. Now that's the best we've seen. Now that's really quite good right there. That's where you'd like to get this horse to get to. That was the point at which the horse was working over the back. So In the beginning, we're training just to get that stretch. But once we do, then we want to keep that consistent for a little bit longer and a little longer each day, because that's when we're really building the muscle. At the point at which we're just teaching the horse to stretch, we're not building much, we're just setting ourselves up for success in the future by getting the horse to work over its back. But once we get there and we can maintain that, we want to just start maintaining that a little longer and a little longer each day. Now look how much better the walk looks here too, as the horse has gotten more relaxed. Much better swing in the walk, much more regular step here. Now the horse seems to be lifting its legs and setting them down more rather than just dragging its toes over the ground. Though here it could still just be a little more active. Once again, I liked how you made that transition. You didn't try to hold the horse's head in any position. You just moved off into the trot. Now this is looking really good here. Much better. Big improvement in the trot now. Like that. Now that's starting to look really good. And as I said, look at the footfalls and just, if you watch the sets of diagonal pairs, it becomes almost mesmerizing when they really sync up and look like they're working together. You can very much see there every time the horse brings its head up high like it did there a moment ago. You see how that alters the gait. All of a sudden the horse stops swinging for a moment. Now that's really good there. Really nice work in that trot. You're finding that optimal place. That is the best place for the horse's trot to be. Right there. Now that's looking really good. What a difference that looks like from than the first little bits we saw of this horse. I think this horse is going to turn into a wonderful horse for you. I don't see any problem here that I'm seeing that would preclude this horse from developing beautifully as time goes on here. Really nice there. And once again, notice now the hind leg isn't so far behind the body as it's trotting. That looks really good. Now that's about optimal right there. That's really good. You can get to the horse to that place every day. You'll see them really develop in a very short period of time. You're doing a good job. Every time the horse hollows on you a little bit, you're getting it back into the correct stretch. And once again, look how it moves when it's there. Look how free all of a sudden it looks. Go back and back up the tape a minute yourselves and watch every time his head comes up how we lose that swing, that is. So you've done a really good job with this. I feel like you're really on track. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in Norway here in just a few weeks, as well as all the rest of our friends from there, and our friends in Sweden and our friends in Switzerland. That's what I'm talking about. See how he kind of really stretches that neck right from the base. That tells me the horse doesn't have a lot of top line. But that's also a very good thing. That tells you that it will be developing top line before long here. Now, when you get to that place in the walk, this is where you'd want to just ask for a little more active walk. Always remembering to use your legs alternately in the walk when we want a little more walk. That's how the horse knows the difference between, oh, I want to trot and I want to canter. Or walk, rather. So in the walk, we use our legs alternately. We want to move into the trot, then we use our legs at the same time. Remember when I say alternately, that's as the inward swing of the side of the horse. The horse naturally swings from side to side. If you just let your legs relax, you'll feel that. And you just want to ask the horse on that side as the leg is swinging in. So great job here in the flat work. I feel like you're well on your way to getting this horse over its back. And I love the fact that you're giving it a little something in the ring. A little reward goes a long way. Now we're going to see a little jumping work here, and my advice to you is exactly no, I would not do this work. This horse isn't over its back enough to do this, and really it's just kind of jumping flat and hollow, which doesn't really teach it to do anything. It's kind of how it comes up the trot, up and hesitates in front of the fence and kind of climbs the fence. And you see there it's just running and flat, throws itself too fast. So the problem is when we start jumping horses before they're really over their backs and really in the aids, you know, it's a very dangerous thing to do because we really have no control over the horse, and the horse isn't working over its back sufficiently enough to jump correctly, that is, jump over its back. So my advice to you is to stay away from this. This doesn't look like anything that would help this horse in any way from what I'm seeing here, at least the way it's jumping here. So I would wait till I get the horse more consistently over the back and then start with a single pole on the ground. That's where jumping starts. And when you can keep the horse over the back and the pole on the ground, then you raise it. All there is to it. Great work here. Look forward to seeing you soon. This is Will Faerber.